Do you want to maximize your success with NCUA? Join Mark Treichel as he shares with you the insider's view on passing your exam with Flying Colors. The With Flying Colors podcast is sponsored by Credit Union Exam Solutions by Mark Treichel. If you would like to work directly with the Credit Union Exam Solutions team and receive support to optimize your results with NCUA so you save time and money, visit us at marktreichel.com to find out more.
Hey everyone, this is Mark Treichel with another episode of With Flying Colors. I'm excited to be back with a former guest, and he's got one of his new staff members on with him today. I'm with the Defense Credit Union Council CEO, Tony Hernandez. Tony, how you doing today?
Doing great, Mark. Thanks for having us again, and it's always a pleasure to be here.
You got it. Yeah, look forward to chatting with you today. And with Tony is Jason Sturrock, who's the new head of advocacy for the Defense Credit Union Council. Jason, it's a pleasure to meet you here today.
Pleasure to be with you, Mark, and look forward to talking to you and your listeners.
You got it. Tony, you and I chatted, 6-7 months ago about what was going on at the Defense Credit Union Council, and we can, at the end, I want to pick your brain on that. But we were also chatting together a little bit on LinkedIn about a recent Supreme Court decision, and that is the Chevron case. And I had put a post out on LinkedIn relative to Chevron and what I thought it might mean for credit union guidance. And that led to a little bit of dialogue, and we thought it'd be good to get on here and talk through it. With that, Tony, I think I'll turn it over to you. When you started hearing things about the Chevron case and started having conversations or saw what I put on LinkedIn, what popped into your head? And then or Jason. So Tony or Jason, this is open to either of you.
Yeah, when I saw when the Chevron defense was overturned by the Supreme Court, and working with our team, with Jason and the rest of the team, this wasn't just an incremental change. This is a big change. This is, I think, I was talking about ecological stuff, right? So this changes everything. This isn't just an environment. People that have heard me speak or write, read my articles before. This isn't taking caterpillars out of an ecosystem or simple as additive or subtractive. This is ecological. This changes the environment, because whatever was eating the caterpillars is now starving, and whatever the caterpillars were eating is now thriving. And so I think you're going to see a similar result in terms of regulations and enforcement going forward. And so this generates total change. And I'll let Jason talk this a little bit more, but where I see this impacting the industry is in the realm of advocacy. And then we're going to have a much more robust, a much more active, and a much more engaged advocacy posture, activity, and then results showing back to our members to concept. And I'm excited because we just hired Jason Sturrock as our new Chief Advocacy Officer. And he and I have been having some discussions with the rest of the team. And Jason, feel free to jump in and offer your thoughts.
No, and Tony, echo your comments. The Chevron or the Looper case that reversed Chevron after being up on the Hill for almost a decade, this is seismic in terms of the potential change it could have on regulation, regulatory activity, and the power of Congress. In a nutshell, you're going to see a 180 flip. You're going to see many more regulators be probably less aggressive in terms of the regulations that they want to put out, but you're going to see a lot more pushback by members in the court, specifically to credit unions. There might be more pushback against NCUA regulations, et cetera. So we have to see how that plays out. But Tony's 100% correct, is that reversal of the Chevron doctrine returns more power to Congress. That it's going to be forced upon Congress to specifically lay out what it wants to happen, not just say, pass a law and say the regulators will promulgate the rules. No, they want to give deference to Congress to be able to that those rules are and the laws are implemented with congressional intent. And Tony is again correct, is that not just advocacy, but direct advocacy, that partnership that we at DCUC have with our members to go in and know the offices and know the staffers and know the members of Congress, so that it's dating myself here a little bit, but not too much, but the old Woody Hayes, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, going to be that type of advocacy again, where there's going to be, has to be an incredibly tight communication and cooperation and coordination with your members as a trade association to get change or enacted and or stop other pieces of legislation. So I think it's not to put too big of a bow on it, but it's a new day in Washington in terms of how advocacy will be done to impact and get the changes that credit unions need to be able to serve our members.
And the 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I'm a former Golden Gopher, and we lost Woody Hayes. As long as Woody Hayes coached, we lost to him. And we're in a world of a passing game offense. And comparing that to Chevron's been out there, and Chevron is the passing game, but then Chevron flipped on its head, and because Congress could rely upon the fact that if they wrote something ambiguous, they can leave it to the agencies to interpret that with their better judgment of their long skilled staff that they have. Now they're saying you can't be ambiguous. And if it's ambiguous, it comes up to the courts. So Congress has built a passing game, and they got to go back to running because they're going to have to be less ambiguous if they want to be crystal clear about what they want done. And as the three of us know, you think you write the perfect sentence, but each word in that sentence has a meaning. And when you go to the dictionary.com, you'll find 3, 4, and then there's the legal meaning of it. And so it's a great concept to remove ambiguity. But do you really remove ambiguity by writing a rule that you think's clear, and then everybody else says, yeah, but you didn't think of this, you didn't think of this, you didn't think of this. So any thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Jason.
No, Mark, you're 100% right. I put a comma on the wrong spot. You've made a lot of changes under law. And I think that it gets back to the importance of being in Washington and being with your member and walking them through the importance of why this change either needs to happen or not happen, and understanding them. And the importance of also it leans upon, I think it devolves power away from national trade associations down into their individual members, because they're the ones that have those personal connections with the members of Congress. I can remember with my nearly decade up on the Hill, my former boss would say, I don't care what what a lobbyist in DC, tell me what the people back home are going to tell me. And I think that's incredibly important. And be able to pass something with the lack of ambiguity so that it doesn't immediately go into court is going to be incredibly important. Mark, we're in it. We're through the looking glass. We're in a new environment. We don't know what rules or regulations that have been put in place now have a better chance to be challenged, or what has been imagined over at the NCUA or any regulators across the board might not get advanced moving forward. We at DCUC are looking forward to that challenge, because we think it plays right into our strengths of having that, we like to call ourselves a little more nimble, to be able to respond on a dime to what our members need to fix and overcome the obstacles they are facing, to being able to serve our nation's active duty service members, veterans, and as importantly, their families all across this country. So I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, I'm just gonna, and then I have 2 thoughts. One that Mark touched on, and then one that you did. But Mark, you mentioned writing the laws and the importance of words. And I remember you're trying to write a mission statement in a room full of, a dozen people. That is a very difficult exercise, because you come up with a vision, but writing the mission statement, and Jason, you mentioned it, just placement of something as simple as a comma can change the whole meaning of that sentence. But then you get word choice. And I used to hate doing this when I was in the military, was writing the mission statement. I'm like, why do we need to change it? Our mission's still the same. But it was just because we like change. And we always joked about happy to glad, and then glad back to happy. And then you end up with some other word, enjoyable. And each of those has a different meaning. And so I think Congress is going to need a lot more input in writing better laws. But Jason also touched on something about talking to members and having that one-on-one connection with those CEOs, those general counsels, or their community relations personnel. From being able to reach out to a trade association that will return their calls, pick up the phone and listen to them, have a good dialogue, and then come up with a clear strategy that's ready to go. What I like about DCUC, and you see it in the red, white, and blue, and I know the viewers can't see the screens here, but Jason and I have the flag behind us, and it's the United States flag. And that's a common bond that unites us. So we try to look at everything through the prism of what's best for our military and our veterans, but also what's good for those communities in which they live. And getting back to Jason's point, all politics is local. And taking that local viewpoint, that constituent viewpoint, and then translating back into policy is going to be very important. So I'm excited about where DCUC's at and where we're going, but it's not going to be an easy walk. 3 yards in a cloud of dust, blocking and tackling, fundamentals, those are all going to have to come back into play. And it's not going to cut it just to simply write a letter and wipe your hands clean. Letters are nice, but like Jason said, it's going to take actual visit. Retail politics, both with members of Congress and with constituents back home.
And I think it's also as incredibly important to have is we're trying to pass legislation that has as little ambiguity as possible, that members of Congress and as importantly their staffs are helping work on the legislation, that they need as little ambiguity from us and our members as possible. Go back to the issue of CRA, which has popped its kind of head up again in the Senate over the last few weeks. DCUC laid it out there, like, for our members, this is, whether it's CRA light, don't call it CRA, but do the same things as CRA in any proposed legislation. It's not something our members support. Here are the things we can all agree upon. We just can't agree upon. We just can't go down this road with you. So I think it's that type of honest discussion, which I hope that this decision will help foster with members back home, us at the National Trade Association level, and with members of Congress.
And the concept of being present, of meeting with your constituency, you meeting with your constituency face to face, and then the people of your organization meeting with Congress. I can compare that to when I was at NCUA as executive director or regional director, and one of the board members would meet with DCUC, or they'd meet with another trade association, or they'd meet with a particular credit union, and they'd walk the halls. They'd talk to all three board members, and inevitably later that day, later that week, later that month, there would be some discussions at the board level with me saying there was this really good idea, or I mentioned the good idea we thought we had to these groups, and they pointed out X, Y, and Z. Mark, I want you to start thinking about that, and can you ask the regional directors, if we do this, the DCUC said this might be an impact, get some feedback. Here we are talking on Zoom, and I'm very nimble now because I'm a remote working for myself. NCUA was nimble because they were a small institution, and you're nimble because of the size of your organization, but you can have a lot of power in that nimbleness, right? Because you represent so many people, and because there's not a huge bureaucracy for them within your organization, that allows you to go move quickly to get the messages to the people that need to have it.
No, Mark, you're 100% right. And the fact our nimbleness and our ability to respond or move quickly is also based upon our membership. Just a recent example, we would find out in the House markup on the NDAA that there was a proposed amendment. This was like on a Tuesday afternoon. Tony and I are walking through security at the Cannon House office building. We get a text, hey, did you see this? And within 10 minutes, because of that relationship that has been built up over time, that trust between us at the national level and our members, we had calls going from CEOs from that state, that district, going into those members' offices and then across the country to where that amendment is then pulled off. And then when they try to push the amendment again in front of the Rules Committee, we do the exact same thing. That we are blessed by who our members are and their ability to organize, and the fact that when they weigh in on an issue, they know it's important not only to defense credit unions, but the entire credit union movement as well. And it's something we lean into on is our ability to organize and mobilize. And as we're reimagining how we're going to do advocacy at DCUC, that's going to probably be, we'll call it the secret sauce on the Big Mac, our ability to be able to affect change throughout the halls of Congress and with our regulators.
You mentioned the agency as well. Certainly our relationship with the NCUA board and the executive staff matters as much. It's got to be a common effort, and everybody has their role to play. But I think Jason said the secret sauce. I'm going to say the secret spice is communication. I'm just talking. And I think when you're clear about your intention, then you knock down a lot of that ambiguity moving forward. And then, what resulted from those intentions is what's going to matter. But I don't think this is going to be something quick. It's not going to be like, wow, we're in a new environment. It's going to take a couple years to unfold as court cases make their way or cases make their way through the courts. Legislation makes its way through committees and onto the floor and onto the president's desk. We're just going to see this, what I said was ecological change, just unfolding very slowly, but it's not the new environment anymore. And I think speed matters, communication matters, and then good old fashioned work ethic.
And yeah, it's going to be a long journey to what post Chevron rules and regulations and government, the workings of government are. And there's going to be situations where trade associations, American Bankers Association occasionally sues over the field of membership, right? They've sued in the past. Will they be watching for some field of membership that gets approved where, okay, under Chevron, this might be ambiguous now, where we're going to go seek the answer for a judge. And so you're going to see different strategies of different groups where there's something that's done that appears to be something that can be challenged, which couldn't be challenged before. And the decision, I'm going to paraphrase here, the decision said that it doesn't automatically mean that anything that was decided can be challenged. There has to be a hook to it that allows it to be challenged. But some new decision by a government agency that relies on that past decision would clearly be a state of facts, I think, where we could see that. So, and then another thing, I was talking with a client who had a legal background, and he was saying that when you go through law school, there is a class. The class is Chevron. They teach for a full quarter or a semester or whatever you do in law school. I'm not a lawyer. I hang around with a lot of them, so I think I know the law sometimes. But whether that's a 6-month class, it used to mean everything was purple, and now it's yellow. So they got to rewrite that class for the school year that starts in September. Yet they don't know what it all means. So they're going to start thinking about the kind of things we're talking through here in much greater detail. So there's this sandstorm of the new world that we're in. That sand will settle, and it's good that you guys are going to be there for your members to as that dust is settling, the sand is settling to be able to pivot, to be able to move nimbly, to make sure that your credit unions are well represented.
Now, and Mark, you're right. There is that other side of the coin where Chevron had been used. If you were pushing on field of membership or other issues that would benefit your industry or credit union, you would cheer for it. But now there is this change. So we're going to have to be not only looking on the offensive side, but also on the defensive side as well, to help ensure that what has been gained and worked for credit unions and regulatory advancement is not lost due to our, as you pointed out, our much more well-funded corporate friends, so to speak. And I'm sure they've been looking at their chops to be able to advocate these things. You can only look at some of the, prominent ICBA and ABA people who have already, tweeted or talked about this issue. But I think that we have an incredibly strong leg to stand on, as we've talked about what has been used to expand credit unions' authority to be able to serve the areas mainly that banks have left behind or turned their back on when you're talking field of membership. But it is something that we're going to have to monitor. And I think that with DCUC and Tony's leadership, we're going to be there, as you talk about, standing up and working with their members.
Very good. Jason, Tony, any more last thoughts on Chevron before we pivot on what else is going on at DCUC?
No, but you mentioned law school, because my wife and I just hosted one of my daughter's friends for dinner, and we were talking. And one of them was in law school right now, and she asked me what my opinion was on Chevron, because just like you said, there is a whole class on that, and that's all going to change. But she said that the bar exam, that won't change for a while. I think she said it's like a 3-year waiting period before you start seeing it show up in the bar exam, because it takes a while. Yeah, this is going to unfold over a long period of time. But rather than wait, like Jason said, you got to have that transition team. You got to go from offense to defense, back to offense, and just be nimble and on your feet. And that just goes along the lines with where DCUC is headed in terms of how we're going to position ourselves within the industry in terms of serving our members and working with others in the other trade associations and leagues as well.
Very good. And I think last time we spoke, there was pre-CUNA AFCU merger, right? And so that was two voices. Yeah, there's a book I refer to a lot called The Wisdom of Crowds. And so the more advocates that are out there for credit unions, obviously the merger created synergies and was a good thing, and the membership wanted it, but there's one less voice, and your voice is still out there, and it might have so any thoughts relative to that concept, like the growing influence that DCUC might be able to have just by either bringing in new members or being another place where a credit union can go to get their voice heard?
We've always felt that we have a unique voice, right? It doesn't have to be a different voice or an adversarial voice with everything going on in the industry. But when you talk about active duty military and veterans, that opens up a lot of doors on both sides of the aisle, right? Credit unions are great, but when you talk about military credit unions and veterans serving credit unions, that just seems to open up a whole lot more opportunity. And we want to respect that and honor that and take advantage of that in terms of providing that voice, whether it's supporting what the industry wants to do and adding more power to that, or redirecting a thought and saying, have you considered this? Instead, here's all these effects. And I think that's important. We want to be part of the chorus. We don't want to be part of singing our own song, but there's different voices in that chorus. Jason, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think, Tony, you're 100% correct. And in our DCUC motto is "We Speak Military," is that there isn't an office door that is closed to us in Congress because of who we primarily represent in terms of the armed services, veterans. And I would lay that there are very few credit unions across this country that don't have at least one veteran or family member of a veteran as part of their field of membership. And so our ability, as Tony talks to us, to be part of that chorus, to help sing with one voice, but make sure that all the voices are heard, is incredibly important, because we can approach an issue from another angle that many not heard. Tony did an incredible job. I think it was in February when the credit union, when the Marshall Durbin issue popped up again on the Credit Card Competition Act, sending a letter directly to Chairman Reed and Ranking Member Wicker, talking about, and other members of the Senate, talking about how passage of this bill impacts servicemen and women and their families and the ability to access credit. No other association or organization has that credibility to speak on behalf of these specific groups. And when you add that all as a part of the stew that you're making, it only makes it better, it makes it stronger, and it should be as part of that collaborative and cooperative principle that we all are part of our credit union DNA.
The nice thing is that Chairman Reed or several members on the Senate Armed Services Committee are also on the Senate Banking Committee as well. And so and the same thing happens on the House side. And that's where we add a very powerful voice where we can boil it down. And it's not just access to credit, it's loss of security. You don't want to be in a deployed environment and some merchants using some cheap, unsecured network because it helps them with their profit line. Meanwhile, the service member's personal information is compromised. And now they got to worry about it when they're in a firefight in some country overseas, right? Defending our interests or our allies' interests. Or some aircraft mechanic who's adjusting the oxygen bottle on an F-15 fighter. You don't want that to go wrong because it puts that pilot's life at stake. There are just countless examples where we think the Credit Card Competition Act would be bad or why we oppose it. But when you add that sort of spin, now it becomes real. And now you have it supported in both committees because there's an impact. And we can do that pretty much on any legislation. We can find a military tie going forward.
Tony, talk about the American Privacy Act, the letter that we led on it. While they pulled it from consideration from House Energy and Commerce Committee, Chairwoman McRogers did, we talked about that very specific issue and it talked about the fact that you're putting additional requirements on us as a financial institution, but you're letting groups like Target and others and our retailers not have to live up to the same GLBA requirements to protect the data security. So Tony's 100% right. If you're overseas or you're worried about that, you just got hacked and somebody's draining your credit union account or something like that, you need that warfighter in the right mind or right frame of mind to do their job. And we can speak to that about how passing legislation or not including parts of legislation doesn't help the overall financial health of that military family or the veterans family.
Yeah. Yeah, with that American Privacy Rights Act, I think what we foot stomped was that you need to include the merchants. If you don't include the merchants in that, then you left a huge hole in your security fence. And the thing is, now your information's sold, and a member might be deployed, but all those mailers and internet ads and stuff are hitting the family email account.
Sure, when they got enough to deal with because the loved one's gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And when you start telling those types of stories or those examples, light bulbs go off and they go, it gets back to Chevron, right? We got to write. American Privacy Act sounded good, but without specificity, and I brought up that word, but without being specific, you can miss something really big. And so that's where we see DCUC playing a greater role.
That's great. Those are great examples. So any other questions I should have asked or anything you want to talk about what you've got on your agenda we're just starting the second half of 2024. Anything big popping that you want to make the listeners aware of for the second half of 2024?
We got a big election coming up. That's the other seismic change. One way or the other, even if the president's reelected, you have a different team. And if we have a new president, that changes everything too. And so just being ready for those, plus the balance of power in Congress, those are things we always look for. One thing that we're keeping our eyes on is a lame duck session, because you get all kinds of legislation that, the members aren't as tied to their voters because they just had the election. It's being on our toes. Jason knows all about that. And anything with the lame duck session?
That keeps me up at night, because you've got 100+ members of the House and 20+ members of the Senate that have either decided to go home or been asked by the people to return home. So they're like, sure, I'll vote for taxing credit unions, or sure, they don't care anymore. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's like there is no election to hold them accountable. I think also one of the important things that we have coming up in the second half of this year is our annual meeting down in Florida. And I think you're going to see a lot of exciting things announced as DCUC continues to grow its role in advocacy. And we look forward to work with anybody, any credit union, any association, any member of Congress, et cetera, to help advance credit union priorities. Because at the end of it, our number one goal is to help credit union CEOs be able to serve their members better.
Very good. Very good. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today. I look forward to seeing what sort of announcements might be coming out about that meeting down in Florida, the tweaks that you'll be making in that regard. And guys, thanks so much for being here today. And listeners, I want to thank you for listening as always. I hope you'll listen again soon. This is Mark Treichel signing off with Flying Colors.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of With Flying Colors. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app to hear future episodes where subject matter experts of all varieties will provide tips on how to achieve success with NCUA. If you would like to learn more about how we assist credit unions, check out our services at marktreichel.com.